She was worth over $200 million, dressed in designer heels and power suits. He smelled of engine oil and wore the same dusty boots every day. But when CEO Madison Blake secretly followed the quiet mechanic who once fixed her car for free, she wasn't prepared for what she saw in that dark alley. And what she did next changed both their lives forever. Let's begin. Rain smacked the windshield like it was angry, but Madison didn't blink. Her manicured hands clutched the steering wheel of her matte black Range Rover as she watched from across the street. Her heart shouldn't be racing. It made no logical sense, but it was. For the third time that week, she found herself parked outside Rust and Bolt Garage, watching him. The mechanic. He had no idea she was here. He didn't even know her name. To him, she was just another woman with a broken Benz 2 weeks ago, except he'd refused to take her money. "You don't need to pay me," he'd said, wiping grease from his fingers and handing her keys back. "Not after the way you helped that old lady in the lot." Madison had barely remembered the moment. She'd helped an elderly woman pick up her groceries after a cart tipped. To her, it was seconds of courtesy. To him, it was a reason to wave off a $1,000 bill. That bugged her and intrigued her. So she came back the next evening in a different car, pretending to be someone else. But he saw through it and still didn't take payment. Now here she was again, wearing a cap, no makeup, hoodie over her expensive blouse, following him like she was the one without answers. Across the street, she watched him lock up for the night. His tall, lean frame looked tired but strong. The way he wiped his hands on his ragged jeans. The way he checked the side door twice before walking toward the alley. His shortcut home, maybe? But then she noticed. He wasn't going home. He disappeared behind the dumpster. No lights. No noise. Just vanished. Madison grabbed her coat and got out, careful not to slam her door. Her heels clicked once, then she kicked them off, barefoot on wet pavement, stalking like a shadow. She reached the alley wall and peeked behind the dumpster, and froze. There, under a makeshift tarp and old sheet metal, sat 2 kids, curled under his arms. They looked about 7 and 4. Filthy. Shivering. One held a stuffed bunny with no ears. He wasn't going home. Home was here. A battered blanket. Cardboard floor. A mechanic, with 2 sleeping children tucked into his arms. She nearly gasped, but held it back. Then she saw him whisper something to the boy, kiss the girl's forehead, and pull her closer. And Madison Blake, the woman whose name could shut down cities, just stood there in the rain, her heart breaking. Because now, she had questions money couldn't answer. And she wasn't leaving without them. The next morning, Madison didn't go to her high-rise office in Midtown. She didn't attend the board meeting she had scheduled with international investors. She didn't even respond to the 15 messages from her assistant asking where she was. Instead, she was back at Rust and Bolt Garage, parked, waiting, watching. And when he walked in, same dusty jeans, same quiet walk, same calm face. You'd think nothing was different. But everything was different now. For her. She stepped out of her SUV. "Hey," she said, walking across the lot. The mechanic looked up, confused. "You again?" "Yeah," she replied, clearing her throat. "I need to talk." He blinked. "Your car okay?" "This isn't about my car." He leaned against the side of the garage, arms crossed, eyes cautious. "Then what's it about?" She hesitated. "Last night, I saw you." Instant tension hit his face. His body stiffened. "You saw what?" "In the alley. The tarp. The kids." His jaw clenched. His gaze dropped, then narrowed. "You were following me?" "Yes." A long silence. She expected him to yell, to curse, to walk away. Instead, he sighed and turned around, walking into the garage. She followed. Inside, the air smelled like gasoline and old coffee. Tools lined the walls. There was a stool near the back workbench. He motioned for her to sit. "What do you want, lady?" he asked finally. "Pity party? You want to donate some shoes, or write a check so you feel better?" Her cheeks flushed. "That's not why I'm here." He looked skeptical. She took a breath. "I just want to understand. You fix cars all day, charge next to nothing, and then you go home to a tarp with 2 kids. Why?" He let out a bitter laugh. "Why? You think I chose that? I think you could charge more. You could at least accept payment." He turned toward the workbench, hands gripping its edge. "I used to be someone," he muttered. "Had a house. A real one. Married the wrong woman. Trusted the wrong people. Lost everything in the divorce. She took the house, the car, my savings, and then walked away, leaving me with the only thing that ever mattered. He paused. My kids. Madison's breath caught. I work every hour I can, he continued, voice low but steady, because I can't let them get taken from me. CPS came once. Thought I wasn't providing stable shelter. So now I don't complain. I fix cars. I sleep on the ground. I feed them before I eat, because I won't lose them. He finally turned around, eyes dark with exhaustion, but filled with fire. So yeah, you saw what I didn't want anyone to see. What now? You gonna post about the poor mechanic on some billionaire's blog? No, Madison said quietly. I'm gonna buy you a coffee. He blinked. Excuse me. Coffee. With me. You can say no, but I'm not leaving until you say yes. He shook his head in disbelief. You're a strange woman. She smiled. You have no idea. The diner was barely awake when they stepped inside. It smelled like burnt bacon and overbrewed coffee. Nothing like the luxury cafes Madison was used to. But she didn't flinch. She followed him to a booth by the window, still wet from the rain outside. The waitress knew him. Hey, Jake, she said softly. The usual? He nodded. Yeah, and 2 of those. He looked at Madison and added, You like eggs? She nodded, a bit surprised he remembered to ask. They sat in silence for a while as the waitress brought over chipped mugs of coffee. Jake wrapped his hand around as like it was the only warmth he had left in the world. Madison watched him carefully. He finally broke the silence. You really a CEO? Yeah. What kind? Tech logistics. Global operations. I built the company from a tiny shared desk in a basement. He sipped his coffee. So, you know struggle. I knew struggle. But I haven't tasted it the way you are now. Not like this. Jake studied her. Then why are you here? Really? She met his gaze. Because you fixed my car and refused my money. Because you helped a woman you didn't know, just because you saw her help someone else. Because you're raising 2 kids in silence and dignity and not asking anyone for anything. She paused. And because I've been surrounded by wolves in suits for so long, I forgot what quiet goodness looked like. He said nothing, just kept sipping his coffee. The waitress dropped off their plates, runny eggs, toast, and hash browns. He pushed one plate toward Madison. Eat. She laughed gently. You didn't even ask what I wanted. He shrugged. Nobody hates hash browns. They ate in silence again. Then she asked, why not take help? From someone like me? He looked down. Because help always has strings. Even when it says it doesn't. Mine doesn't. He leaned back, eyes sharp now. So you're just gonna swoop in like some fairy godmother? Put us in a hotel? Fix our lives? What happens when it's inconvenient for you? She didn't speak for a moment. Then slowly reached in her purse. Not for money, but for a worn photo. She slid across the table. Jake looked down. A child. A boy. Brown curls. Big smile. Holding a woman's hand. That was my brother, Madison said quietly. When we were kids, we lost our parents in a fire. I was 9. He was 5. We bounced through foster homes. I was adopted by a rich family. He wasn't. They didn't want both of us. So they left him. Jake looked up, startled. I promised I'd get him out one day. But I never did. By the time I was 22, he was gone. System wore him down. So don't lecture me about guilt or pride, Jake. I know what it means to carry both. Silence. Heavy and honest. He finally asked, why are you really helping me? Madison met his eyes. Because someone should have helped him. And maybe if someone had, he'd still be here. Jake didn't say anything. But his hand reached for the photo. Gently. Carefully. Then he nodded once. Okay, he whispered. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't permission. But it was the first door he'd opened. The rain had stopped by the time they drove out of the diner parking lot. But the air still felt heavy. As if the sky had exhaled, but hadn't finished grieving. Jake sat in the passenger seat of a Range Rover, his arms folded tightly, posture stiff, like he didn't belong, like any sudden kindness might collapse under him if he leaned too hard. The kids were waiting behind the garage when they arrived. Madison hadn't expected that. The boy, Eli, stood guard like a soldier, shielding his little sister with a rusted wrench in one hand and a cracked walkie-talkie in the other. The girl, Sophie, peeked from behind a tattered blanket with wide eyes and trembling lips. The second she saw Jake, her whole body relaxed. She sprinted to him and jumped into his arms. You're back, she cried. I told you I would be, baby, he whispered, kissing the top of her head. Madison stood back, frozen. She didn't speak, didn't intrude. This wasn't a moment for her. Jake held his daughter with one arm and ruffled Eli's hair with the other. You kept watch. Eli nodded, trying to be brave. No one came. Just a rat. I threw the can at it. Jake smiled, eyes glistening. That's my boy. Madison's throat tightened. She blinked away the sting behind her eyes and stepped forward. Slowly, gently. I got us a place for tonight, she said, her voice quieter than usual. Jake turned, Sophie still clinging to his chest. I didn't say yes. I didn't ask for forever, she replied. Just tonight. For them. His jaw clenched again. A wall was still up. But this time, it didn't feel impenetrable. After a pause, he nodded once. They drove to the nearest clean motel she could find. Nothing fancy, but safe. She handed the key card to Jake without a word and waited near the lobby as he walked his children into a warm room with clean beds, electricity, and a heater that actually worked. She didn't follow. She just sat on the bench outside, watching the door, giving him space. 20 minutes later, it opened. He stepped out, let it click shut behind him, and sank down onto the bench beside her. For a moment, he just stared into the night. Then quietly he asked, "What do you want from me?" Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but confusion. "I don't want anything. You followed me. You're offering rooms. You're sitting outside a rundown motel with some stranger who fixes mufflers. People like you don't do that for free. I told you. I knew someone like you once, and no one helped him. That still doesn't make sense. Maybe not. But neither does refusing help when your daughter's toes are turning blue." He laughed, dry, tired, bitter. She had frostbite last winter. Didn't tell me until her skin started peeling. You think that didn't break me? Madison turned to face him, her voice low but steel-lined. Then let me do something. He looked at her for a long time, and then finally, quietly, something inside him cracked. You want the truth, he said, not waiting for a yes. I used to have a repair shop of my own. Jake's Customs. Small place but good clients. Word of mouth. I built it from nothing after my ex walked. But then my partner gambled away our taxes. IRS came down hard. Took the shop. Took everything. He looked down at his palms. Grease embedded in the lines of his hands. I applied for other jobs, but once they saw I had kids and no address, I was a risk. No one hires risk. Madison said nothing. Just listened. I've been saving, he continued. Every dollar I can. Been fixing cars behind Rust and Bolt, because the owner lets me use the space for free at night, if I help him during the day. And the kids. They're tough, he whispered. Stronger than me. They haven't had a bed in 4 months, but they still smile. They think this is temporary. That we're camping. His voice cracked. I let them believe that. Madison finally reached out, just her fingers resting lightly on the back of his hand. They don't need to believe it much longer. He looked up. What do you mean? She exhaled slowly, making sure her words landed soft but strong. I want to help you start again. No, I'm not offering charity. I said no, he snapped, standing up suddenly. You don't get to play savior and walk away feeling better. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I know you're a father who hasn't given up, she said, rising to meet his height. And I know the system's broken. But I also know this world doesn't get better unless people like me do something with the power we have. He stared at her, breathing hard. Then, without a word, he turned and walked back into the motel room. Madison stood there under the flickering light. She didn't leave. She wouldn't. Not until he opened the door again. Because she'd seen 100 broken men in boardrooms, hiding behind stocks and cigars. But Jake was different. He was broken in all the right ways. And that kind of man was worth rebuilding. 3 days passed before Jake called her. Madison had given him her number that night. No pressure, no expectations. Just a quiet, call me when you're ready. Now, as her phone buzzed, she froze mid-meeting. She stared at his name for half a second, then stood up and walked out, ignoring the shocked looks from her staff. Hello, she answered. His voice was quiet. The kids, they asked if they could see you again. She smiled. Tell them I'll bring cookies. They met again at the motel. Jake looked different. Not cleaner, not wealthier, but steadier. Like he'd finally exhaled. Eli ran to Madison, tugging her hand like they'd known each other forever. Sophie gave her a crayon drawing with Madison's curly hair and the words, "Thank you, Miss Maddie." Jake still resisted the idea of help. But this time he listened. Madison didn't offer cash. She offered partnership. "I bought a building," she told him. "An old body shop. It's yours. You run it. Your name. Your way. No catch. Just one condition. You train people who need a second chance. Like you." He stared at her. "You serious?" She nodded. "Dead serious." 6 months later, Eli's garage opened. The name was Jake's idea. He said it reminded him why he fought. The garage had 6 bays, fresh paint, and a line of customers that wrapped around the block by day 3. Jake hired 2 homeless vets. He trained a single mom on tire rotations. He built a locker room for the kids to do homework. He didn't just fix cars anymore. He fixed lives. And Madison? She showed up every Saturday. Sometimes with cookies. Sometimes with tools. But always with belief. And that was the thing that saved him. Not charity. Not pity. Just someone who stayed.